Hello everyone and welcome to the January 2023 edition of our Greater Vancouver Market Update. I do apologize for the late release date of this video, but there was a much needed family holiday during the first couple of weeks of the year for the Majerski clan. Glad to be back, however, and getting ready to buckle up for what could be one of the more interesting years in Greater Vancouver real estate in recent memory. So what I'd like to do today is quickly review last month's stats like we normally do, and then do a little year in review of the year that was 2022. So without any further ado, let's take a look at those numbers. All right, let's start off with the December sales figures, which came in at an underwhelming 1,295 transactions, a near 20% drop from the previous month of November. But more staggeringly, this was nearly 52% lower than what we saw in December of 2021. And in terms of the historical average, last month was 37.7% below the 10-year average for the month of December. And as sales continued to slump, many sellers just wanted to get through Christmas, electing to either pull their properties off of the market or hold off listing altogether. As a result, inventory dropped to 7,016 total listings, which represents a 23% drop from the previous month. So once again, the drop in inventory was outpaced by the drop in sales, and as a result, tightening supply and demand levels. Because of which, our months of inventory dipped down to 5.4 MOI. Typically, when a market is struggling and prices are falling, we see months of inventory well above the 6 MOI mark. In January 2019, for example, we were sitting on 9.8 months of inventory and generally hovered above 7 MOI for the first half of the year. In January of that year, we only had 1,100 sales and over 10,000 listings. So, as I've mentioned in my past videos, I think sellers right now should actually feel fortunate that we're not sitting on those kinds of inventory levels. And if you're thinking about selling, if you know you're going to have to sell in the next 12 months, my recommendation would be to get your property listed before we hit those levels again, because that's when prices will really start to take a beating. But even with MOI sitting below 6, prices continued to slide by another 1.5%, with the board's benchmark price coming down to $1.11 million. Prices have been dropping anywhere between 1.5 to 2% per month since around May of last year. At first glance, that may not seem like a lot, but after 10 months, that starts to add up, which brings us to our year in review.
Gotta get back in time.
2022 started off pretty much the same way that the previous 18 months or so had gone. I described us trying to drink from a fire hydrant. We were well within seller's market territory, hovering around the 2 months of inventory mark. Remember, anything below 4 MOI is typically considered to be a seller's market. And we continued to see major FOMO. When supply is that tight, many folks simply felt that they needed to do and pay whatever it took to get themselves into a home. As a result, we were still seeing multiple offers on pretty much every listing, no matter what shape it was in, and prices continued climbing at a very fast rate. But even as this was happening come February and March, you could start to feel consumer confidence waning. You could sense buyer fatigue. There were starting to be less offers on the offer dates, and throughout different segments of the market, this really turned in a matter of a couple of weeks. There were folks out there who had lost out on 10, 15 properties who were starting to wonder how long this could go on for, and they were simply emotionally drained. On top of that, the topic of inflation was really front and center on many people's minds, as many folks were really feeling the pinch of skyrocketing food prices, gas prices, and the increased costs of just about anything else you can think of. And I tell you, just like the guest who shows up with a salad to a dinner as everyone's finishing dessert, our policymakers have a knack for showing up fashionably late to the party. On March 2nd, 2022, the Bank of Canada began their current round of what is referred to as quantitative tightening by raising their overnight interest rate by 25 basis points to 0.5%. Now, if I can back this up a little, quantitative tightening and quantitative easing are terms used when the central bank wants to open or close the valve, so to speak, on liquidity and money flowing into the economy. In response to the pandemic in early 2020, the Bank of Canada slashed interest rates to 0.5% 4% on March 27th, 2020. This was their way of opening the economic valve and encouraging people and businesses to borrow money because it was cheap to do so and invest it into the economy. In Canada, where we are extremely real estate dependent, however, a large amount of that quantitative easing translated into exuberance into the real estate market. And this is what happened as a result of all the cheap money flooding the market. Prices took off. In fact, between January 2020 and April 2022, prices rose by a whopping 38% across the region, with some areas in the Fraser Valley nearly doubling in value. So, in an effort to rein in inflation, the central bank started tightening credit by raising rates on March of 2022 and continued to do so throughout the remainder of the year. This resulted in a 4% increase in rates in a span of 9 months, the fastest increase in history. As John Passalis put it, when you slam on the brakes, you're gonna get whiplash. As credit became tighter, the market quickly began feeling the pinch, with prices peaking in April and quickly heading in the opposite direction as the Bank of Canada raised rates by a minimum of 50 basis points with every scheduled rate announcement. Now, one might ask themselves, why did it take the Bank of Canada so long to begin increasing rates? The real estate market really started to take off as soon as the first round of lockdowns started easing in the summer of 2020. Surely the central bank could see that real estate prices were out of control by the end of Q1 of 2021. And this wasn't a Vancouver problem, this was nationwide. Why did it take them another 12 months before reacting? Minor prediction here, but when we look back years from now on how the pandemic was handled, I truly believe that the government's unwillingness to react to what was happening with real estate prices during this period will be one of the biggest failures in governance in recent history, because many people could potentially suffer for many years as a result of this mismanagement. And so here we are. Since the market peaked in April 2022, prices across all property types are down 12%, but the higher end of the market is down closer to 20%. The next interest rate announcement by the Bank of Canada is scheduled for January 25th, where it is expected that rates will rise one more time, but the general consensus is that it will be a smaller 25 basis point bump, and maybe the last one we see for a little while. Time will tell, of course. Personally, I think once rates stabilize, so will the market. But that's not to say that it won't stay fairly stagnant for a while. Look, people will always need shelter. People will always need to move. Sales will happen. But will we see 20 plus percentage point year-over-year price increases anytime soon? Not unless we see another massive drop in rates, in my opinion. And even though they always seem to show up late, let's hope our leaders can at least learn a lesson or two from these most recent gaffes. All right, that's it for me for this month. I will see you back here in just a couple of weeks for the February edition of our market update, where our goal is always to bring you unspun, unbiased analysis of the Greater Vancouver housing market. Take care, everyone.